No more dirty jokes.
Okay, all right. So welcome everyone to our latest panel discussion. This is for membership development, and the focus tonight is on attracting young professionals. And my co-panelist tonight is District Governor nominee designate David Keys, who hails from the Rotary Club of Sandpoint. And this is the first time I've been able to introduce him with his new title. So he's been recently promoted and they've tripled your salary, right, David?
They did. Little did I know these calls would be a stepping stone. I didn't know, but it worked out well. Thank you.
Great. All right, and I'm gonna let you start the introduction tonight, and I'll share a few thoughts of my own, and then as we usually do, we'll let the discussion take hold, and it should be a lively discussion tonight.
Well, great, Doreen. Just cut me off when you need to. I could be going all night. I really could. Membership's a passion. It has to be. It can't be just something we jump into. But the topic tonight, I'm looking at our Zoom call, folks, and I don't see a whole lot of young professionals on this call. And so nothing personal, just so you know. So we're all young at heart, which is great. But to attract young professionals, I think we need to think like a young professional a little bit. So I put out a little poll to our young professionals in a couple of the clubs that I know. And my questions were basically, what do we need to do to attract more people like you? And so that was pretty wide open, and it was, it's interesting, pretty good response too. And so I'm going to summarize that a little bit, and let's see if we can make that applicable to what we're talking about tonight, Doreen. So we'll see where that takes us. A couple themes. I've got about 5 themes that really popped out. The number one that really stuck with me was they truly want to belong to something bigger than themselves. They don't know how to do that, but they can see there's a difference to be made when they're working with a group versus trying to do something by themselves. It was really the power of we versus the power of me. And that really manifested itself in different ways. I called back 2 of them just to kind of get a little more insight for tonight. But I was just really amazed that, and it makes some sense, right? I mean, we're all in Rotary to make a difference. So young professionals aren't any different than any of us that way. So I thought that made some sense. So we can speak that language a little bit. They do like the networking part and the meeting of new people. Are they looking at that as a way to help their business and or personal life? No, not really. They just want to have a bigger network of people they know, whether it's a church family, whether it's a Rotary family, whether it's a out of work family. The different tribes, they want to belong to different tribes and know more about different tribes that they don't belong. So I thought that was interesting too. They like the big picture of Rotary. They like the fact that we are working to eradicate polio. They all know what polio is. They don't remember iron lungs or anything like that, but they know how devastating polio is. And they think it's great to be on the winning team when we get rid of polio, when we eradicate polio. So that was actually pretty cool. I had no idea that would be something that would motivate younger people, but that's really cool. They also like the idea of our world approach, the exchange programs. Every one of them said, tell me more about the exchange programs. And of course, we all know there's youth exchange programs. There's also mid-career programs that Rotary offers too. There's different travel organizations. There's different opportunities for Rotarians to do all sorts of travel. We've had a few in our club that have traveled to Tasmania. They've gone to Australia, and we've had folks come from there up to our club here. And so it's just always really, really positive. And that's something that they didn't know about. They love the peacekeeping part of Rotary. And so when you start talking about we have that permanent seat on the United Nations, we do this, this, and this, they are all over that. They want to know how to help with a shelter box. They want to know what shelter boxes are. They want to know how we can make a difference, again, by being active and motivated. And again, that made me feel really good too, because that's part of the reason I'm in Rotary too. They like the idea of the hands-on projects. They think that's a really an important part. And they really like when Tim has his cat or dog, I can't even quite tell on the screen. They again, they want to jump in, and I think we'll find out that every segment of society wants to be a part of Rotary. They just don't know how to connect. They don't know how to get in into Rotary. So really, in a nutshell, that's really where that went, and I thought that was real interesting. So that took me down a different path, and that was, maybe we're doing this wrong. Maybe we aren't doing what we need to do to attract the right members. So I kind of thought about this, and I thought, why don't we treat Rotary like a nonprofit organization, which it really is, right? So how do we attract people to nonprofit organizations? Well, first of all, we encourage emotional investment. We want people to own what they're going to jump into. So I think Rotary, fits that bill. A good nonprofit asks personally, are we doing that in our Rotary clubs? Are we making that ask? Are we inviting the right people to our meetings? Are we engaging them? Are we asking them? And then once we ask, are we finding a way to onboard them and making them part of us? And that goes back to matching people with the opportunity. So how many times do we have a new member who just doesn't quite plug in because, we forgot about him, the sponsor doesn't step up to help out, and all of a sudden our Wednesday noon meeting, they miss it 1 week, oops, they miss it 2 weeks. Now it's not a habit for them anymore, and we lose them out the back door after going through all the effort to attract somebody. Again, we match them with opportunities. What do you like to do? Well, we like to build trails too. We like to hike here too. We've got so we find the people, the personality, the events to match their personality. And once you made that connection with somebody, it isn't just a meeting at lunch. All of a sudden, hey, I'm working with Tom to stuff bags for the Chafe Ride, or I'm doing this, serving meals in the summer for kids who aren't going to have lunches unless we help them out. Just the different ways to plug in. We're giving firewood, delivering firewood to veterans, or whatever that little touch is. You got a buddy, you're making a difference, you're going to stick, because that's that emotional connection that way. Receiving volunteer input. What do you see so far with our club? What do you think so far? What could we do? We're looking for future officers. We're looking for board members. We're looking for committee chair. Where do you see yourself plugging in? Do you want to plug in any of that? Or are you just happy stuffing bags for this event, or, again, building trail or whatever else? And I thought the last one that I came across was thank them. How many times do we not thank people? Doreen, thank you so much for putting these together. I mean, it's just simple things like saying thank you sometimes, especially when they're new to an organization. Hey, thanks for showing up today. Great. What'd you think of the speaker? What'd you think of lunch? Making that connection with people. So then it really isn't just a task. They're seeing something, they're getting something out of it, they're getting feedback, and they're growing as they become a Rotarian. Doreen is mentioning my journey right now. I've learned more about Rotary in the last 2 weeks than I have in the last 20 years about some of the cool stuff that Rotary does. I thought I knew a lot, and I've been pretty active for 20 years. There's an iceberg thing going on here where you see the little part above the water, but all this cool stuff underneath. And it's amazing and humbling. And, the more people we can share that you don't know what Rotary is until you are Rotary, I think that resonates with people, again, wanting to belong to something bigger than themselves. So, Doreen, that's kind of where I wanted to go with my part of the discussion. Okay. I kind of just did a rapid fire bullet point approach to it, but is that what you need? Do you need anything more from me?
I think that's great. I knew you would come up with something brilliant, and you did not disappoint. So thank you so much for sharing that. I'm going to add some of my own observations, and then we'll open up the discussion to the entire group. I have had the benefit of working with young professionals in my former club in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and recently in the new club that we formed in Christina Lake, which is a pretty young club. We've had members from the ages of 29 up to 80. So it's diverse in terms of age. And I'll share with you what those members told me they needed in order to join our new club. And then I'll share with you some of the adaptations I've had to make as a leader of the club to accommodate the needs of the younger professionals. They need flexibility because today's workforce doesn't always accommodate traditional Rotary meeting schedules. And that affects not just young professionals, but it affects older professionals too. At the end of my banking career, before I retired, I could no longer leave my place of employment for an hour and a half, 2 hours. I had to cover the teller line because personnel were cut. It was all about reducing expenses. And so the flexibility that I used to have as the manager, it didn't matter if I was a vice president, I didn't have that flexibility anymore. And younger professionals don't either. We have to make Rotary affordable. Our club dues are $50 a quarter, and that's Canadian dollars. So that's like, $37 US. We give a discount when married couples are both members of the club. So they pay $75 for the two, or $37.50 for each quarter. And then we fundraise to make up the deficit, because that just covers Rotary International dues, district dues, and in Canada, we have to pay an extra insurance premium for our liability insurance. We have to be adaptable. And that affects us in a couple of different ways. So what I have learned is to be very realistic in my expectations of what younger members can contribute. And what I have found is that they might not attend very many meetings. We have some younger members that might not show up for a month or two. And it makes me wonder at times, well, are they engaged? And I start to worry. But then we have something come up. Like recently we had an Oktoberfest gala, and it was a fundraiser and a celebration. And all of a sudden they came out of the woodwork because that appealed to them. And they put together this event in about 3 weeks. So, don't judge them because they don't come to meetings. Are kind of boring to them. They like to do stuff. So if you don't mind having the older members take care of a lot of the organization and planning, until something comes up that engages them, then they will show up. So you have to kind of be patient, I think. And the other thing too about being adaptable is that all of the rituals that we're accustomed to in Rotary meetings might not be attractive to younger persons, particularly songs. And if your club still does prayers, that's not very attractive. Our younger people are more diverse and inclusive, and not everyone observes religion in the same ways. So it's much better to transition to an inspirational moment or something like that that can be shared with the club that's going to have appeal to everybody and not leave somebody out because they don't observe traditional Christian observations of religion or organized religion in general. Involve the younger persons in the club and let them have their voice. We need to be, I attended a DMC, a district membership chair meeting right before this meeting. And, they reminded us to be mindful of how we interact with younger people. So we don't want to treat them like they're children, basically. We want to treat them like they're our equals and be mindful of microaggressions. Now, what's a microaggression? It could be as simple as saying, oh, so-and-so, you take care of this computer thing that I can't figure out because obviously, right, you're a young person, so you're an expert. So that assumption can be felt like a microaggression. So that's what we want to be mindful of. Don't, be prejudiced about what their interests are or what their talents are, or what their limitations are. Meet them at face value and treat them like you would any other member. And give them some autonomy. Don't say, well, you can't be on the board because you don't have the experience, or shut them down because you know better. You know, I'm sure everybody in this group is very progressive, but there have been occasions where that has happened to younger people. So we want to treat them like adults and equal partners. You can consider adding a satellite club or become an impact club. So what the heck is an impact club? Maybe you've heard murmurings about what an impact club is. So an impact club is a club that decides that they're going to create, whether formally or informally, a satellite that is for younger professionals or younger persons. These could also be Rotaractors that want to be Rotarians. And you may or may not know that Rotaractors can be dual members of both Rotaract and Rotary. So great opportunity to bring more Rotaractors into Rotary this way. But the people that are in this offshoot, this little satellite, they don't come to meetings at all. They just are a pool of talent, and they pay their dues and they contribute to the Rotary Foundation. We have all the same expectations of them that we would have of traditional members. But they will show up to do projects. They will show up to do fundraisers. They will be the labor that you need, because maybe your members are rule of 85 members, and your rule of 85 members are just as valuable. They have the historical perspective of your club. They have the experience in Rotary. They can write bigger checks than younger professionals, but can they, well, Rod remembers when Spokane Hilliard Rotary Club had the Green Bluff food concession. If you're 85 years old, you're not going to be able to lift as heavy stuff as if you're 25 years old, and you might not be able to stand on your feet for 12 hours a day. So that's where the younger people, you know, when I was younger, I had more energy than I had money. So it works out great that we can get the, you know, the most benefit from what each person has to contribute to Rotary. You can have a formal satellite club. And I'm always a little bit surprised when I sometimes approach clubs on the idea of having a satellite club. They might say, for example, oh, well, we're worried about losing membership. Well, you don't lose membership with a satellite club. Those members are members of your club. And they will usually stay members of your club. They can break off and become a separate club if they have more than 20 members, and that's their desire. But there's no reason to think that they would, as long as you have a very beneficial, cooperative relationship with them. So what if they did break off? What if those 20 members did go some? Well, then you've just given birth to another Rotary Club. That's a wonderful thing. And you can start another satellite. Why are satellite clubs important? Because they can offer a lower dues structure. They can offer an alternative schedule. I have member candidates that come in through Rotary.org as leads that want a Saturday meeting. I don't know of any club in our district yet that offers a Saturday meeting. Sometimes younger professionals need to have an evening meeting, and they might only want to meet once or twice a month. That's where Satellite Club can come in. And you don't have to change your traditional club and all of the things that your older members find valuable and important, those traditions that they enjoy. You can offer those alternatives in a satellite club. So that's what I wanted to share. Those are my observations, and I'm not judging how this is. You know, the fact that younger people don't want to attend any meetings, I'm not going to judge that. I'm not going to ask all of our members to change and be that way. But I can certainly find a way to accommodate those younger members. And the last thing I want to share is that we did a survey, and we asked everyone if the club was meeting their expectations and what they wanted to do differently. And 100% of our members said, we only want one formal meeting a month. And we want that second meeting to either be a social or an organizational meeting, like if we're planning a fundraiser or we're doing a service project. So that's what we've shifted to. And it's been very beneficial. And we have twice as many people show up for the socials as we do for the traditional meeting. So I'm not going to interpret that. I'm just going to say that's the way it is, and that's what makes our club successful, and that's how we keep our members engaged.
Doreen, can you say what a social is? I mean, is that everybody goes to a movie, everybody goes to a bar, everybody goes out for pizza? What is that?
It can be whatever they want. So this month, we're going to a member's home, and everybody's going to bring something, so it'll be a potluck. And another time, we're going to have a Christmas party. We don't know where that's going to be yet, but we're a small community and we don't have a lot of places where we can meet. It could be the golf course does kind of open up their restaurant in the winter for Christmas parties, so it might be there. In January, our social might be the polar plunge, where we jump in the lake and we get warmed by a bonfire. So it can be whatever the club decides it's going to be. And we usually decide, spontaneity is another thing too. Younger people don't want to plan things to death. They want to decide 2 days before they do it. And that's when they make their commitments unless something better comes up. So that's an expectation adjustment I've had to make too, because in my baby boomer generation, we were raised that once you make a commitment, you cannot change it no matter what. That's not the traditional core value of a millennial. And so, I just accept it. It's, they make their plans 2 days ahead, and if something better comes up, they're going to do something else. So I'm not saying that our club members are that way, but I'm saying that younger people tend to be more that way than the way that I am. And I've learned not to judge that.
Doreen, I just have a question. Did you
Yeah.
get any pushback from long-term, maybe older members on that idea with the social on the second meeting?
We're a brand new club, so
Okay,
so we don't have that constraint, if you will.
perfect.
Now we do have a couple of long-term Rotarians that maybe feel a little uncomfortable that things are changing that way. But I would say that those persons are uncomfortable with a lot of things that are changing. And we can't keep our club in the past because of that discomfort. So we have to accommodate the greater will of the club, and that's the direction it's going. So, and really the two that I'm thinking of have kind of left the club pretty much. One because he moved to be closer to his family members because he's aging, and that was important to him. And the other one I think would have left anyway. So I don't think that accommodating their wishes would have brought any benefit. We kind of go with the majority, and let me kind of condition this. We try to reach agreement by consensus. So when we do a survey, that's just the beginning. We took those survey results to our club assembly and we discussed it. So that gave everybody the opportunity to disagree and to compromise. And so we don't just say, okay, well, this was the vote, and if you don't like it, that's tough. No, the survey was just the beginning of the discussion. And then that came to the planning meeting, and that's what everybody wanted to do. So, and like I said, it was 100%. So maybe the older persons didn't participate in the survey. We had all but 3 of our members respond to the survey.
It's really good.
Yeah.
I like those ideas.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, Doreen,
Yes.
Pend Oreille Centennial Club did that about 2 years ago, and they weren't nearly as scientific about it as you were. They just said, you know what, we want to make one meeting a month social. And it's been going to the same restaurant or bar every time, but it's just not having that. And they're a morning meeting, 7 o'clock club. So that's a big shift for them to do something, at night. And they've had a great success with that. They've really, in fact, there's people who just go to that one. They miss the 7 in the morning meetings. They'll go to the night social. So you never
That's
know.
great. Oh, and that kind of jogged my memory. I do want to mention networking because this hasn't come up in my club. We kind of have a different culture here at the lake. It's not, you know, people come to the lake because they want to get away from the corporate world. So, you know, so it's sort of a different culture here. But when I was in Albuquerque, we had younger members that came in and they were pretty candid in that, you know, they wanted to be engaged, just as you mentioned, but networking was just as important to them because that's their livelihood. That's how they, it's not the same world that I entered the workplace in, where you stayed in a job for 10 or 15 years and you kind of came up through the ranks. The way younger people get ahead is they stay in a job for 2 years and then they get an offer
Right.
to advance to a better position at another job. And so if you cut them out of networking and say there's a taboo about that,
Right.
you're going to lose them. You've got to give them both,
Mhm.
because that's how they're going to make their place in the world. And remember, when Rotary first started, it was for business networking.
Mhm.
It wasn't until the 1910 or 11 convention when they shifted to the new model of he profits most who serves best.
Mhm.
That's when Rotary became a community organization and not a business networking club. So be mindful of the need for younger professionals to incorporate networking as part of the benefit of being in Rotary. And look what our older members have to offer. They have all that experience. They might be in a position to help that younger person be more knowledgeable, be more adept, to maybe find them a connection through their own network to help them advance in their profession.
Right.
Kathleen.
Yes, this is great information. Thank you very much. I wonder how you are assisting them with networking. We had a recent question about, well, what's not working in our club? And there were 3 things that came out. One is that accessibility might be difficult for our young professionals, and then also training, and then communication. So we offer in person as well. So we do a hybrid club. We offer emails. We have Lynn is setting up a new monthly. And I'm just wondering, how are you getting to your club? I have not had much response with older club members with emails and surveys. So I'm just, I like your input and maybe some assistance with that.
Yeah, well, we totally organized during COVID, so we never had an in-person meeting until we chartered.
Okay.
So we communicated through social media initially, and then we've communicated exclusively through email since then. Now, when we meet, we will continue to maintain hybrid meetings because we think that's important. We have members in Spokane. We have members in the west side of Washington State. We have members that go to Mexico for 6 months of the year. So we are definitely going to continue with hybrid meetings and hopefully perfect our techniques with that. But, you know, I can tell that, you know, usually only 1/2 to 3/4 of our members read their email because I send them through DACDB. And you can see who reads the email. You can't see, I guess, yes, you can see who. You can see the percentage and you can also see who if you want to dive down to that level. Not to shame anybody, but if you see that you're not reaching a certain set of people
Mhm.
by email, and I don't think younger people really embrace email. That's not their favorite medium. Then you've got to try other methods. You might try calling somebody up or sending them a text message, or I've even showed up at their place of work if it was really urgent. But ask them, you know, this is a nice one-on-one conversation you could have. What is your preferred way of communicating? And see if you can adapt to that. Now, in a club of 20 people, that's a lot easier to do than it would be in a club of 50 people. But if you have a club of 50 people, you have a whole different set of dynamics to work with. And I think that in a club of 50 people, if there's somebody that you haven't seen for a while or heard from, it's very beneficial to have somebody call them and check in and
Yeah.
say, we care about you and we notice that you're not here. Just like David mentioned, it's nice to say things like thank you and to let people know that they're valued and appreciated. Well, no matter the age of the person that you're
Mhm.
dealing with, everybody wants to know that they're missed when they're not there and that their presence is important. Because if I'm not important to an organization, well, I can go somewhere where I am important. Okay,
Mhm.
so, you know.
Okay, thanks.
Doreen, we had to really up our game during the COVID, of course. So we really changed. I was the membership chairman at that point, and we really changed from an outreach, bringing people into our club, to a maintaining and connecting with our members that way. And I still even hear to this day that people really appreciated that, because Zoom isn't for everybody, for sure. And there are
Mhm.
people who are frontline people at their work who are ready to go away for an hour to a lunch meeting and pull the plug at work, then come back to work, where they couldn't do that if they couldn't physically get out of their office or their shop or whatever. So we
Yeah.
found that to be a good exercise for our club. Oh, one thing that I wanted to mention, if you don't mind, is the pre-induction part of what we do in our Rotary Club. We everybody who comes into our orbit goes through what we call a pre-induction, and it's really just a low-key get together. There's a little wine, there's a little bit of chips and whatever else, and we bring in a president or a chairman, older members, newer members, and we invite, again, prospective members or people who are in our membership pipeline, we call it here. And so we sit down for an hour or two and just answer questions, wax eloquent about how cool Rotary is, make sure that people know expectations on what's it going to cost. What do you think I should do for, how many events should I participate in? That type of stuff kind of gets out there early on, versus going through all the effort of getting a new member just to lose them out the back because you don't make that connection with them. So we've had people, and the stickiness factor has been really, really good. And so that's part of our DNA in our club too, because again, we want to make sure they have that connection. They want to know who's who. Where do I go to become a member of X committee? Well, you met the chairman now. Now you know. We don't know where you're going to land or what you want to do, but you now have a tribe here to help you kind of figure your way through it. And so, that's been really good. There's an old saying, and it's probably not even true with this group we're talking about. And the old saying is that people join Rotary when you ask them for those connections. They say, I want to make those business connections. I want to make those connections. But they stay because of the personal connections, the looking forward to seeing Tom, Bob, and Harry, or whoever else at the meeting, making those personal connections more than the business connections. We have, I think, 4 personal investor types in our club, and they all have different approaches. One will not network. He goes out of his way not to network. This is not my networking time. Another guy is a former president who he's all about making sure, here's my business card when he's talking to people. He's all about networking. And the other 2 kind of float back and forth. So I kind of watch how they all act. And what they really do is they find their level of comfort. You can't make a non-networker a networker. You can't, force somebody into a square peg into a round hole, but you can make that opportunity open for anybody. And then as a club, a resilient club like we all are trying to work on, then we can say, okay, you want it to be networking time. Well, how about you be our guest speaker on this date and talk about the world of personal finance or whatever their passion is or whatever their occupation is. And you turn the microphone over to them. They're happy as a clam, aren't they? And they're going to be ready for that meeting 5 weeks away. And they're going to be attending every meeting to find out who's going to be listening to them and planting the seeds. And we have now met that need for that one member. And that's great. It truly is. It just shows again that we're listening. We want to respect their time, and maybe they'll benefit from it that way.
Well, and networking isn't necessarily confined just to the professional or corporate realm.
Right.
I have found that my Rotary network benefited me in every aspect of my life. If it were, whether it was finding out who is the best physician in town for this particular thing, Or I needed a property manager for a property in the mountains in New Mexico. And it was my Rotary network who came through for me when dozens and dozens of phone calls just bore no fruit at all. So, oops, I got somebody in the waiting room I need to let in. Lauren's
Hey,
joining us now.
Rod had a question, I think, Doreen.
Oh, Rod, yes. You're muted, Rod.
When you're talking about the flexibility in meetings to attract different, how would you deal with a club that really doesn't want to give up their weekly noon meetings?
That's where a satellite club is very handy because you're, for clubs that have been around for 50 or 100 years, I don't think it's fair to ask them to change everything to accommodate a younger generation. But you can have a satellite club that accommodates the needs and the desires of a younger generation and encourage interactivity between the two. So you can have members of your legacy club do a makeup at the satellite club, and you can have satellite club members attend the noon club when they're able to. Maybe they have a day off and they have an hour for lunch or an hour and a half to get back and forth to a traditional meeting. Maybe you can have a member pay their lunch that day, but a club that charges $250 a quarter for dues, that includes meals because they meet every week, that is not going to be something that most young professionals can afford because corporations aren't paying the freight for Rotary anymore like they did when I first joined. I didn't have to worry about what the meals cost or what my dues were because my employer paid all of that. And that just isn't as common anymore. So I would say if your core club doesn't want to change and they want to keep all those same traditions, whether it's singing songs or doing things a certain way, don't take that away from them, but find a way perhaps to accommodate a new generation of Rotarians and have a satellite club.
Okay, I think that has some possibilities. However, I believe there is some maybe misunderstanding or misconceptions of satellite.
Mhm.
Some comments have been, well, they are a threat to the size of the club because they will leave and form their own club. And so what's the point in having them here?
Well, that rarely, first of all, that rarely happens. In my experience, the satellite club likes the fact that the mothership is taking care of most of the business in the club, right? And so it becomes a symbiotic relationship. Now, that's not to say that it always works out that way, but these are members you wouldn't otherwise have. And I would say that the onus is really on the sponsor club to foster the kind of relationship where they have enough autonomy that it does make for a good symbiotic relationship. Now, to me, if the thing that they look at negatively, I think if you give birth to another club, that's a pretty wonderful thing. You've added a new club and we all benefit from that. It shouldn't be viewed as we're competing for members, but I understand that people do see things that way. So just as I try not to judge younger generations for the things that they do differently than I do, I try not to judge older generations for the things they do or the perceptions they have that are different than mine. So I think if those perceptions are rooted into your club and you can't counter them, just remind them that most satellite clubs stay with the mothership. They don't want to get involved in all that planning and budgeting and meeting, they want to have that done by somebody else and they can do their thing. Did that answer your question? Would that make it more attractive?
It answers it. It gives me some thoughts to move towards, and also it generates the question, have any members of a club that has a satellite club move to the satellite club?
I did, when I couldn't even get to a morning meeting because my staff was cut so short. I used to have to go into the office at 6:30 in the morning to get all my administrative and reporting done. And then I could be a teller most of the day because I didn't have anybody to run the teller line. And then I would go to the satellite meeting in the evening because if, you know, all the gods were working right, you know, and the tellers all balanced by 5:30, I could get to the evening meeting at 6 o'clock. So I did that. Another reason club members shift to satellite, and this is a common objection of clubs, they'll shift to a satellite because the due structure is less and meals aren't mandatory. And the members of the main club will say, well, we're going to lose all our dues because everybody's going to migrate to the cheaper club. They don't. Some members will, but those are members you would lose anyway because they can't afford the expenses of the primary club or the sponsor club. So it's a way to retain the members you have that might otherwise leave. And I have not seen the club that I belong to in Albuquerque that has a successful satellite club. Both clubs have grown. And in the beginning, the satellite club almost died. But that happens with all new clubs. When a new club charters, unless they have strong support from their sponsor club, you can expect a 50% drop off in membership the first year. When that happens to a satellite club, you could be down to 4 members. So it's not unusual for a satellite club to falter and fail to thrive. So you have to help them along a little bit. But I've never seen a satellite club destroy a primary club. Never happens. But both clubs, if you do it right, both clubs will grow and thrive. Because you'll have eventually more members from the satellite club that migrate over to your primary club as they mature and they have more flexibility, or they might have more funds later in life. But, you know, they might move too. There's no guarantees. I can't predict the future. I just can share what my experiences have been.
I think
Doreen,
Peggy had a question.
Peggy has a question.
Yes, let me answer Peggy and then I can come back to you, Rod.
No, I'm done.
Oh, okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt. I wanted you to finish. That's all good. When you talk about banking, Doreen, reminds me of my experience and my saying that there's no such thing as an unhappy ex-banker. But that's
You
not
know,
what
the whole
we-
industry changed in
I
20
know, but that wasn't my question. At first, I want to really appreciate the takeaway of the message you're giving, which is don't judge,
Yeah.
like try and find out what people need and want and try to be flexible and accommodate. So I think that's a really important message because we do get stuck where we are. But I wanted to ask Dave, you talked about your pre-induction process before, and I'm pretty sure your growth rate for membership, which I'm sure is why you're sharing what you do, has been exceptional. Is that accurate?
The stickiness of the pre-inductions it's been phenomenal. And so we go back to, we used to not do that in our club, but when I became a membership chair, we have a guy named Arthur Pollock, who's like Mr. Rotary, and he'd moved from California, and they had pre-inductions as just part of their DNA back then. And before we would do some meet and greets, like after the meeting when people were invited, we'd have a little talk, but nothing as formal as the pre-inductions. So yeah, every club will have some churn. There's no doubt about that. But I know that we'd be failing as a club right now if we didn't have the stickiness of the pre-inductions. And what I did was I challenged one of our new members to ask those questions, ask 20 questions, and then answer them. And we'll use that as the beginning of our handout that we give out to every pre-induction attendee. And so, and it's a living document, right? Because those questions always change. And it's really fun to watch how that's really, I don't know, we're probably in our 5th or 6th incarnation of that now. And it really is. It's funny, some of the older members say, well, I want to copy that too, because I didn't know half of this stuff. So
And-
we're thinking, I didn't get a pre-induction.
You introduced that at one of the previous sessions like this, I think. So that means it's on the recorded session, which I haven't plucked it off yet, but I will. But I wanted to get a picture of, so the pipeline is just the members identifying people in the community, and then how do you bring them out? Like what entices them? So it's just saying, hey, come on, have some snacks with us and chat. And I'll say something about Arthur. He's on the happy hour on Saturdays. And the last meeting, the way he talked about Rotary, I was just sitting listening, and I got absolutely recommitted to Rotary. Like he just had a way of talking about, the what Rotary is and what Rotary does. And that's what I think you're doing at your pre-induction meetings. And that's what I think I want to get better at.
That's what happens. It's everybody has a Rotary story. Everybody who's done anything in Rotary has that one story. Arthur has about 7 of them, and he'll have tears in his eyes sometimes talking about the cleft palate children in China when he went there as part of Rotary. He'll raise a room up when he talks about some of the scholarship kids in Mexico that he's helped out. He just has that whole thing, and you can't sit for half an hour with Arthur nearby without that overwhelming somebody. And then so, when's the last time you had a personal connection at a meeting? That's kind of tough at lunch. You'll learn a few things for sure, but once you get them into that pre-induction where it's relaxed, there's a glass of wine, you're surrounded by several other people who are in the pipeline too, but you're also surrounded by committee chairs, you're people who've been involved, and they all have that great Rotary story. I really push stories when I've been involved with Rotary, because once you have that story down, it gives me goosebumps. I was on a radio show this morning talking about Rotary here in our region, and I got goosebumps talking about Firewood Rescue, of one of the things that we do. And I kept thinking, that's why I do this. That's why I want to make a difference that way. And that resonates with young professionals. That resonates with people who are moving to a different community with maybe a former Rotarian, right? They want to get involved again. That resonates with people who say, well, I've read about you guys. I know about you guys. I now have a time in my life where I think it'll fit, and tell me more. And we're kind of a closing group. We don't say, are you on board? But we make sure that we have the follow-up. We make sure we have people who are assigned to that person. Please be my guest one more time. We've got a great speaker. We've got a former astronaut this week at Rotary, that type of thing. Who's not going to go to that? You want to meet the astronaut. And do you always have the astronaut? Well, kind of. He's an honorary member of our club. Oh, really? Boom. They're in. Whatever the hot button might be for that person, you've learned about that over crackers and wine and a little free time. It really does break that down.
How many new members have you gathered?
Oh, it's hard with the churn. We've had 20 plus in the last 2 years. But we also lost a few people who died. We've had a few, a little bit of churn in our world too, but it's been growth. And if we didn't do that, my fear is, again, we aren't doing our mission. We're losing the people making the difference in our communities. So that's our goal, is to keep that moving, because people do get older, or they move, or whatever happens. You're always going to have churn in these clubs. So if we're not growing, we're failing.
Kathleen, is your question for David?
No, I just wanted to say how much I appreciate that information, and give some kudos to Sarah Groves, who's our chairperson. She's going to be holding what she developed as our Rotary Rookies. So she does exactly what David's talking about and invites them. We have about 9 people coming the end of the month for Rotary Rookies, and just exactly that, a really nice social. And then there'll be some of us oldsters who are there to talk about what we're doing about Rotary. And I just it's a really great idea and really, really helpful. So I just wanted to add that.
So they're not new members, they're just potential members?
They are brand new members that some of whom have been already oriented, and some and have come on as members, and a few coming up are people who are actually, we're going to bring them in tomorrow. So yeah, just bring them in once they've made that commitment and they are members.
Kim?
So yeah.
Yeah, I know we're kind of coming to the end, so this is just a general question I wanted to ask at the end because I may not be quite aligned with the seeking young professionals, but our club here in Moscow is about 30 members and our average age group is about 70. So a lot of what I'm learning today is exactly what we need to do. And I see that we're going to have a little bit of a struggle with values between older members, real older members and young members. But anyhow, this gives me a lot of help. My question though is, as I've been doing a lot of research on Rotary International website, My Rotary, there's an awful lot there under membership assessments, membership plan templates, corporate memberships, an awful lot of stuff there. I'm just interested in asking the general question to any of you. Have any of you used that material? Have you found it particularly good, a waste of your time, or what particular pieces really were good? Because I am pretty much starting from scratch on this. Over.
The assessment was valuable. We maybe didn't go deeper with it. Maybe we could have, but it was encouraging that the majority of the comments were positive.
Which assessment did you do, Peggy? Because there's a classification one, there's a diversity one, there's quite a few different assessments.
It wasn't classification, it wasn't diversity. It was more of just checking in with the members. So I'm not sure which one that was called, but
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
How about anybody use the membership plan template or whatever it was?
I haven't seen that. I bet you there's a lot of resources we don't know
Well,
about.
I've downloaded, I think, about 10 attachments.
Right. Tim, I actually used that a few years ago when I was the membership chairman, and it works. Again, anything I think you can do to codify where you're going, setting the goals. We have a guy named Todd who's on this sometimes, who's just really good about focusing on different segments. Okay, so now we have the accountants covered. Let's go for young architects, and boom, their club goes after young architects. They invite them to a meeting. They start focusing on different groups. Time was, of course, most of you remember this, that Rotary would only allow 1 or 2 people in the classification. So clever people would figure out, well, guess what? Okay, we've got now real estate. Now we have real estate broker. Now we have real estate waterfront.
Commercial.
We always found the classification to work, but it was kind of a onerous type of little thing. But he still keeps that in mind. To have a well-rounded club, you kind of want that little bit of different input all the time, don't you? And so, especially in Moscow, what a great location, what a dynamic area. I mean, you know, if Rotary's making a difference there, and I know it is, who doesn't want to be a part of that? I guess that's the next challenge, is getting them on board.
Yeah, that's our potential. We just got to tap into it.
Yeah.
And Tim, I love the resources that are in the membership section of My Rotary. I don't always use them in exactly the form that they're presented, but they're always at a minimum the inspiration for the activities that I do.
Okay.
And there are so many there that I don't think anybody could realistically do them all, but
Yeah.
not every club has its own challenges and gaps. And so use the ones that you need and adapt them to your own needs would
Yep.
be what I'd suggest.
Yeah, I used the branding one and built our own brochure. I don't know how effective brochures are anymore, but when we do our kettle corn at the farmer's market, we got it right there on the counter so people can just pick up one and take it home. I don't know if it's accomplished anything yet, but I think it's worth it. It's a good piece, to tell you the truth.
Well, that's great. One thing I wanted to add before we leave, and Kathleen, did you have a question or a comment as well?
Just a quick question. Rod mentioned the older, longer term members and kind of, that disease. We're finding that a lot of our older members are not really coming back, even though we have a hybrid meeting and we're meeting in person again. They're not really coming back. I did send out a survey and I called everyone personally, and they're still not. I'm just wondering, are people experiencing that? And do you think it's just kind of recovering from COVID, or what's just a thought from you guys, what you're experiencing?
Well, quickly, Kathleen, in our world, we did focus on those people, and we wanted to make sure we didn't lose them, because coming out of this, what we think that Rotary provides that connection that's been missing. You know, we joke about not being able to do live meetings, we're not good at that anymore. And there are people who have it worse than all of us. And I would go back to who sponsored that person and maybe put it the onus, instead of having one person like you talking to everybody, who's their connector, who's the person that really brought them into Rotary. And if they're still tight, that might be your conduit versus you trying to, wrangle 13 people.
That's a great idea. Yeah, thank you. Great.
Yeah, just one quick thing. I see a struggle with people bringing in new members. The ones they're bringing in are looking like them. They're 60, 70, 80 years old. They're not bringing in younger people.
And that's okay, Rod. That's okay.
But they
again,
die
our
too
club-
quick.
Yeah, our club's got to be diverse, and that's great that you're well, I call it Q-tip heavy, with the gray hair. But it's okay. But they also have connectors too. They have grandkids, they have kids, they have other connectors in your community too that they can bring up and share a service project with or something else too. So, I don't discount anybody. Anybody wants to make a difference, we've got room for them at the table. And our newest, oldest members are 86 and 87-year-old couple who moved to Sandpoint. And they told me right out, we're not going to do any lifting, but we'll write checks. And they lied to us. They do write checks, but they've also #1 volunteer at our chafe ride, just everything. They've embraced our club, and they're, the one, Barbara, was a member of the Carter administration way back in the day, and then Clinton administration later on. I mean, they're just cool people, and people want to be around them. It doesn't matter how old they are, but people want to sit with those folks when they come to our meetings. It's just funny to watch how that works.
I know those people. 'Cause this is my 51st year in Rotary.
You're almost a veteran. That's great.
And
Congratulations.
Rod, I want to say, is one of my best friends in Rotary because he was a member of the club that I first joined. And Rod, you have always been such an influence on me. And I just want you to know that.
Well, thank
And
you.
I have always looked up to you. So you are my Rotary hero, and I'm so glad to have you join us tonight.
It's awesome.
Before we close, I do want to emphasize how much wisdom our older members have to share and the inspiration they can offer younger Rotarians. And when we talk about socials, let's not forget this tradition in Rotary called a fireside. And that is some of the best opportunities we have for younger people to become engaged and hear the stories that Arthur has to tell, that Rod has to tell, that I have to tell, and Dave and you, and I'm sure everybody in this room has to tell about their Rotary experiences that all bring a tear to our eye, and let people know what those moments were when we really understood what it meant to be a Rotarian. The projects we've done and the lives we've saved and all of those emotional moments that keep us so connected. So those are the opportunities we have. And I think that's why people are attracted to more social events than they are meetings right now. In this post-COVID environment, if we truly are post-COVID, I'm not sure we know that yet, nothing is going back to the way it was. Everything will be different from this moment forward. So we have to change too. But I think people are valuing even more those personal connections. And I think having socials is a great way for everybody to reconnect and to mourn our collective loss from this pandemic and to move forward. So how can we bring the generations together? Do it with a social. If it's not working in a regular meeting, don't miss that opportunity to let people connect in that meaningful way. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. This was recorded. I'll send you the links. I'll send you the links on YouTube now, so we have permanent archiving of our earlier sessions. I'm available, and I'm sure I'm going to speak for David. He's a very generous person. I'm sure you'll be available for anyone that wants to follow up.
Absolutely.
All
I'm
right.
looking forward to a social with Rod. I really am.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Nice.
Happy
Nancy.
Halloween.
Nice.
Happy Halloween, everyone.
Happy
Oh,
Halloween.
You
Looking
look
a little
very
pale
scary.
there.
Well done, well done. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much. It was great.
All right,
Yeah,
Thank
really
you.
great.
All right, good
Bye-bye.
night.
Thank
good
you.
night.
Hey, Doreen, I let Lauren know that we were hanging on after the call, so.
Oh, good. So
Yeah,
you're
I just-
welcome
I
to,
was
Lauren.
late, so now I have to have a detention.
All right,
I
let
didn't
me,
want to have a, waste an opportunity with royalty here, so that was good.